just looking at his corner and he doesn't get back to you, that's his problem, you know? Who's meeting?
Late. You say when he's late.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to this Finance Committee meeting to review the mid-year budget report. I don't know. That's what somebody told me.
It was, okay.
Mid-year, yeah.
You had the transfers on the,
With all the transfers. That's mid-term budget report. Right?
right, but I thought we were talking about the transfers.
And we're talking about the transfers, the mid-year transfers. Yeah.
That's what's on the agenda.
Okay, the
All right,
transfers.
so-
How?
So, where do you
I
want
know
me
it's
to
the
start?
mid-year transfer, but
Start at the top.
Okay, so these are the mid-year transfers that are on the council agenda today, and I'll go.
one sec. Mary Vossler from the budget office, welcome. Councilor Toya Allen, Councilor Khalid Bey, Councilor Steve Thompson, Councilor Joe Driscoll. Go for it. Thank you.
Apology.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
We were running late, so I didn't want to.
If I could have made it run 10 minutes more late, I would have.
Okay, so I'll go line by line, and I'll explain what each line is, because I know sometimes the acronyms can be confusing. So the first, what the first section is estimated revenue increases in the fiscal 19 budget. And the second piece transfers to are the expenditures where we expect to spend more than what we initially budgeted for. So the first line is something called premiums paid on RANs. What a RAN is a revenue anticipation note. The city borrowed about $43 million back in November. RANs have to be paid off usually within a 9 to 12 month period. The city will be paying this off in, I believe, early July. It was a 3% rate that the city borrowed. It is pretty standard in the industry right now for issuers who buy these bonds. TD Securities was the purchaser of them, to pay a premium. They're more attractive to buyers. So TD Securities paid us a premium of $219,390 for that issuance. So we don't budget for premiums on RANs. Some years we get them and some years we don't. So that's an unexpected revenue source. Sales tax is the next line item. We're currently seeing a 4.3% increase in our sales tax, and projected out towards the end of the year, we're looking at over 5%. So we're taking some of that sales tax money and using it as revenue to fund some of these expenditures down the line that are going over budget.
Do we know what caused the increase?
In sales tax? The sales tax across the state, and Tom DiNapoli has reported on this a couple months ago, has been over 5%. They've seen good growth.
Just economic growth?
Economic growth, people are spending, consumer confidence, there's good jobs reports out there, inflation, all those taken together are producing good sales tax numbers for the city right now.
Highly effective common council.
That's it. I knew we did something right. It's all showing. It's all paying off.
That's right. So, and we certainly hope that keeps growing and keeps moving along.
As long as we stay on the council.
Yeah, right. The next item is called.
Okay, may I interrupt on sales tax?
Sure.
So I realize these are different things. The transfer, which is as of a certain point, and then this report. But the part that confuses me is like sales tax in the variance report, which is something we were recently given, shows we're projected to get 4.4 million more. So the budget for sales tax revenue is going to be like 90 million. And in this transfer, we're only increasing it to 86 million.
Correct.
So why do we do that? Why is this the transfer now so much lower than what we seem to already know will be higher?
You have to keep your budget in balance. In balance. I only took what we needed at midterm. We may need to dip into that account again if it keeps growing, and we still have, when we talk about some of the expenditure growth, I mean, we may need that down the line. We normally come to the council 2-3 times a year for transfers, for budget transfers. Here at midterm, probably closer to May, and then in June when we start closing in on the fiscal year. If I were to put all of that sales tax in, I got an unbalanced budget right now.
Well, you could always take less of the fund balance, right? You could.
Well, ultimately that happens in the end.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You good? All right. The next item is a Medicare Part D subsidy, and this is on the Part D retiree subsidy on prescription drugs, Medicare Part D. The city provides the drugs to the retirees. We're involved in something called an EGWIP plan. This gets really complicated. I'm going to forewarn you. And there's numerous subsidies and payments as part of these EGWIP plans. There's a low-income subsidy that the city gets. There's a coverage gap subsidy. There's a capitation payment. There's a catastrophic payment, and there's prescription rebates. The timing when the city gets those funds is extremely difficult to predict. And in January, the city did get its catastrophic payment for the prior year. Have no idea what that will be. It was an $800,000 payment, and it's going to increase the revenue that we budgeted for during the year. Anybody have any questions on that?
What increases the revenue to?
To about 2.2 million.
Okay, to the last number here.
Yep.
As amended.
Yep. The fire reimbursements from outside agencies, there was a fire watch on a property located in the university area that the city fire department had to physically man the building for a number of weeks. And that company who owned it had paid the city, and we recognized that revenue of $525,000. You'll see down in the expenditure line, I'm increasing the fire department's sworn overtime by the exact amount because that's where it needs to be. The state aid miscellaneous, that was a payment from the either Senate or the Assembly for body cameras for the police department. So we recognize that revenue, and then down in the expenditure side, we're going to recognize that expenditure for police sworn operating supplies and technical devices to purchase those body cameras this year. The school district tax buyout is, as the city has to make a...
Okay, let's pause, I'm sorry. On the police cameras, this is just... We're going to do it this year, but we don't know all the details, right? Because they're figuring out what they're going to do. How does they know what they're purchasing?
You would have to ask them. I just wanted to
we
put
just
this
put it in the budget, so
we
we're
have to put this in the
it.
correct account, so when they go and do purchase those body-worn cameras, they have the money in their account to buy them. Okay.
So some of whatever
I
purchase we have to do for that will happen this year, hopefully, and then, or it can...
That's a complicated contract because I think the company that we're on a trial basis right now, I'm not sure when the 1 year ends.
So this is the type of money that could roll forward if it doesn't get spent? How does...
yeah, you could roll it forward. I don't know what their plans are. There's I think there's 3 different pots of money for the police cameras at this point, and I don't know where they are with those.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
The school district tax buyout, we make the city's general fund, we make the school district's tax levy 100% whole. So we estimate what that would be, the uncollected portion, and we don't know what that exactly will be until October when those properties go to tax sale. So this year we budgeted basically 2.5, but we were only able the buyout was 2.2, so we had an additional $248,000 in revenue.
Do you think it's fair to say that the change is because of the land bank holding more properties that no longer go through this billing process, so that
Well,
the
the
school
land bank-
district doesn't get made whole on them?
They hold the properties they hold are all tax exempt. So
No, I know they're tax exempt, but before the land bank took them, we were billing them. They weren't paying, and then we were making the school district portion whole.
we've always made the school district whole on their levy.
All I'm asking is, do you think that it's going down because the land bank is clearing their properties that don't pay property taxes? Eventually, they go to the land bank. Until that moment, we send bills. If they don't pay, then the city, we make the school district whole on what wasn't paid. So when we move it to the land bank,
I understand your theory, but I can't answer that question. I'd have to do a lot more research.
okay.
Do you have a suggestion as to why this might have occurred?
Why the buyout was less than I would have to do some research into that. I mean, people were paying their taxes, school tax bill. Yeah, we've been seeing, yeah, we got more money.
Well, I guess I would, the question for the school district would really be, from their perspective, does it look like their collection has gone up, or is it that theirs is kind of similar and it's just this accounting of unpaid taxes that's changed? I mean, it's in the city's interest to have it this way, in my opinion, but it may not be in the school district.
So maybe I'm talking, making reference to not necessarily land bank or finance collecting taxes because of the land bank. Is that kind of what you
No, it's okay. All right, thank you. I'm good on that one.
Okay. The transfers too are the expenditure items that are going to exceed budget, and we need to put more money in their budget. The first one is the law department, the professional services. They need an additional $340,500, and you will need to speak to them on why that is going over in an executive session. The fire department, the sworn overtime is related to the fire watch in the revenue section. The police sworn body cameras, again, are related to another revenue item. The Social Security is based on the total projected salaries that we will be paying towards at the end of for the entire fiscal year. There were labor increases in the contracts that are in this budget. There were 2% in 18 and the 2% in 19, so we'll have additional Social Security taxes to pay. The police 207C expense, that account is for police that are injured on duty. It pays for their medical expenditures, and that account is running extremely high right now. Through the beginning of February, it was at $700,000, and we're projecting that to go to about $1.2 million by the end of this fiscal year. It's the number of cases, and there is one large case that the city is still paying medical expenses for an injured firefighter who I believe was injured over 10 years ago. The rant.
When they hit 65, does that move out? Does that change?
I don't know his agreement with you'd have to look at the police union. I don't know.
Okay.
His expenditures are more for home health care. Not sure how that's covered under when you go to a Medicare Advantage plan. The RAND interest, that is a companion piece to the premiums paid on the RAND. The total interest is going to be approximately $800,000 for that RAND. A year ago, we were paying about 2.25% interest on RANDs. This RAND is at 3%, so it's at a larger period of time. We were borrowing the money at a higher interest rate. We normally just project around $450 for the RANDs every year, but going forward, we're taking another look at that because of the rising interest rates in the market right now. Do you have a question, Tim?
So it's fair to say that net increased revenue in payments that we're gonna spend 131,000 more on RANs than we budgeted?
Close to that, yep.
Okay.
The other area of concern is the hospital medical surgical insurance account. That account is running high right now. Some of the cost drivers are specialty drugs in the prescription drug area. The inflation in drug costs and inflation in medical care expenditures alone, plus the fact that we have 20 high-cost claimants right now, and those 20 high-cost claimants are, in January, we're at about $3.4 million. So high utilization, more members in the plan. This account is going to go over what we normally budgeted for. Supplemental benefits, that is an account that covers disabled firefighters, and that account is in relation to the fire local 280 contract. So when they get a contractual increase in their pay, these 7 or 8 disabled firefighters also get a increase. So that should be going up $30,000 by the end of the year.
So I have a question.
Sure.
And it's just so I'm clear on it. So I can see where the estimated revenue increases tie into the transfers on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else, so the law department, professional, Social Security, that money comes out of our general fund and gets transferred over to these accounts? Where
This is all in the general fund.
Okay.
All these transfers are within the general fund.
Okay. And this is the only expense, this $2 million is the only expense that's coming out of the general fund?
We're increasing the general fund by $2.9,031,000 in the revenues, and we're putting more expenditures in of $2.9,031,000.
Okay.
So the budget stays balanced.
Questions? It says under the health insurance, it says we're projected healthcare expenditures 45.8 million, which is 1.7 million higher. And then in there it says an increase of 159 plan. What is it?
Total plan members.
Those are total plan members.
Yeah,
It's not a
January-
name for a plan.
No, at January 1st. So that's if you have a new employee who comes in who elects family coverage, you've got now the employee, the spouse, and any dependents under that.
So since January, we've hired 159 people, or?
No, 159 members were added into the plan. The net effect. Some people come out because they turn age 65 and they go to the Medicare Advantage plan. Some people elect COBRA, but when I did a comparison of the points in time, that was the difference, was 159.
Okay. Some could be hires, some could be for other reasons.
Yes.
Any other questions on the specific increases or transfers for the revenue or expenditures?
I just want, there is nothing else that's gonna come out of the general fund that's gonna be paid to any department other than what we have here, right?
Right now, correct.
Okay.
The only part in the big picture of this, right, like the thinking out loud, the council sets the total spending for the city. So we're essentially increasing what we're authorizing the administration to spend by 2.9 million for the year. But then a portion of it was the fund balance, and I think of the fund balance as I know we need to maintain a balanced budget all the time, but because we use our fund balance to do the balancing, right? It seems, I would expect that all the 11 million of fund balance that gets spent won't be spent. So we're increasing the levy
You're not increasing the levy at all.
Not the levy, I'm sorry, wrong word. We're increasing your authorized spending for the current fiscal year, even though, I don't know, it just seems.
You're also increasing your revenues.
I know, but like in theory, we could say like, oh, we thank you for the revenue, and take it from the fund balance, figure it out, or like the option is to hold the spending cap and to just.
If you don't make these budget transfers for the expenditures, these departments can't do anything. The police wouldn't be able to buy their body cameras. The law department has expenses that need to get paid. And I mean,
I know.
you hit budget. You need, and if there's additional expenditures, you need that budgetary room in there to pay those bills.
Yeah.
So I guess if I could add on to his question. So with the initial projected amount of fund balance that would have been spent in this specific year, I guess the very simple and easy, clear question is, how much has been saved? How much of the fund balance have we kind of relieved?
So we projected 11. So with all the different changes, you know, these are the large dollars. There's a lot of small dollar ones. We are projecting that at that point in time, we would use 6.1 million. So we've gone from 11 down to 6.1 million. Granted, things can change from, you know, March 1st down to June 30th to lessen that impact or to increase that impact. But hopefully it's to lessen it.
So basically, that's a $5 million use of the fund balance?
6. Yeah.
6 right now.
But this is the part that's
Down
weird.
to 6.1, or it's used at 6. So
If
it's
I'll-
down to 5.
No, it's down to 6.1.
So if it were at 11, that's 5.
Right.
Okay.
We used 5 million.
But you're saying the 11 projected is now a 6.1 projection? No.
The use of fund balance that we are projecting after this mid-year is $6.1 million.
So somebody else can convince me otherwise, but this is the part that confuses me.
Somewhere we use 5. Good, you go ahead.
So in the mid-year report, we talked about, I split it up between the revenues and the expenditures. So the revenues were showing, I believe, $5.1 million or $5 million of additional revenue, and the expenditures were going to be projected around, I think it was 700,000. So we're saving $5 million at midterm. So 5 less the 11 is 6. Okay.
But that's the only, so we're saving 5 million, left hand, but then we're giving you 3 million more to spend, but we expect there to be 5 million less, so why do we have to authorize more? Why can't we just do, I don't know, why isn't there something with the fund balance in this that says, basically you could do transfers without increasing the total amount, couldn't you, if you just had the fund balance as part of the transfer equation?
The initial budget had $11 million in there, and that's our starting point as we move through the fiscal year.
But when we authorize this transfer, it's still assuming 11 million in the fund balance use.
From the budget, yes.
Right, that's the part that doesn't make sense to me, because we're saying, we're like authorizing these changes, still assuming we're gonna spend 11 million of the fund balance, while at the same time we're saying, oh, we're doing pretty well, we're not gonna use the full fund balance, we're actually gonna spend less of it than we're even transferring here. But in this transfer, we're giving the administration authorization to spend more. So it's like we're re-saying, go ahead and spend 11 of the fund balance 3/4 of the year through the year again, even though we know, or I don't know if we know, but we anticipate that it
These
would
are all
be.
within that $5 million. So we're recognizing the additional revenue and the additional expenditures.
Yeah, I don't want to make any assumptions that it's not understood, Counselor, but just maybe for my own clarity. I get the point of his question, or at least I believe I do. The appearance of spending more, but it's that we're spending the surplus. You know, the surplus that was made, or the additional revenue, is essentially being used to cover increased expenses, right? This additional revenue up top, unexpected revenue, is 2.9 million. It's being used to pay the cost of unexpected expenses or some additional expenses. Is that correct? And as a result, I mean, we don't have to use the fund balance to do it. This is how we reduce.
No, they're keeping, in this, they're like
I
keeping.
understand that the fund balance is there. I know that it's still in the budget.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm talking about actually using it. But it seemed like maybe
We haven't
I'm
used it
confused.
yet,
Would you
though.
Explain it to me.
We haven't used it yet. Our fiscal year
that's
isn't
what I just
closed.
said. Anybody listen? Everybody all right? Did I screw the question up?
No.
I was explaining it from the administration's perspective, or at least I thought it was.
So if you're the administration, do you get to spend more tomorrow than today?
My point in that respect is you can qualify it as spending more because of increased expenses, right? These were not the expenses that were expected, just some additional costs we didn't expect, but we also made some additional revenue. So instead of taking from the existing budget, we can use the surplus to pay, and so we use less of what we actually budgeted for. Okay, I mean, because I was kind of being looked at like I was saying something wrong.
It's hard to hear.
Oh, is that what it is? My bad. Right. There you go.
Is that correct, Mary?
At this point, you authorized an initial budget with certain expenditure lines. I've got expenditure lines that are going way over budget right now that need to be adjusted for. This is that adjustment, okay? And
Nothing else in the budget has changed.
No, nothing else in the budget has changed.
The total amount increases by 2.9 million of revenue and by 2 million
2.9.
of expenses. So like with that levy, whatever it was, 240, how many million is our budget? 240,
245, I think.
245, so we're
240,
going from like 245 to 247.9, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And
Right
then
now.
we're still leaving in up to 11 million of fund balance use in what is here.
Right, as a projected use, because that was what was authorized back last May.
Right. And I may be confused, but I still believe we're like basically saying, oh yes, we're going to give you more ability to spend. We're going to let you spend 3 million more, which means we still are allowing you to spend up to 11 million of the fund balance, even though we anticipate that the fund balance, all 11 million, is no longer needed. Right, we don't know that.
We don't know
but
that at this point, but these,
yeah, like I would
So-
say just hold it same and use the fund, anyways. Budget hearings in the morning. Woo, who's got the coffee? Marty, you got the coffee? I'm sorry, Mary, were you gonna go?
no,
Did
I'm done. I mean,
Joe Driscoll, you got anything else?
Nope.
Marty, you got the coffee? All right. I call this
you know,
budget.
I will say, as we put these,
Finance.
budgets together, you're gonna have differentials like this, because we're doing this, we did the last budget in May of 18, situations change and budgets are a plan, and I'd love it if I never had to come to you for budget transfers, but
Yeah,
have
budgets
to
are a
do it
plan, but we
because
have
the-
more information now than we had 9 months ago, and that's why authorizing 11 million of the fund balance use now makes less sense than previously. Like, it made sense for 11 million to be authorized then, but we're reauthorizing in practice the 11 million without an adjustment for what we know now, which is that we're
you
unlikely
could.
to use it all.
So is your suggestion to reauthorize the amount of fund balance? Not do this and just reauthorize the amount of fund balance?
It would be just to move things across codes using the fund balance to keep everything constant to the original budget.
You would want to
total.
put would you want to put I don't believe, Counselor, you'd want to put the whole fund balance into the, I wouldn't
You're
think
making
so.
it sound like I'm saying the opposite of what I'm saying. I think I'm saying hold them we give you permission to spend 245 million. That's what we gave you. We've given you. And now, of that, 11 million is from the fund balance. We said, that's okay, use 11 million. Instead of going from 245 million budget with no fund balance, instead of going to a 234 million, right, we would have to cut if we didn't want to use the fund balance originally. We would have had to shrink the size of our government. So we've let you use 11 million to maintain 245 million. Now you're saying, oh, we actually need to spend 248 million in this, but we've got revenue, so the revenue is offset. So we're not going to use any more of the fund balance, but you're not decreasing the use of the fund balance. You're still planning in this plan, in this transfer, you're planning to spend all 11. Whereas in this other thing, we are saying at the same time that we're actually not going to spend all 11. So I'm saying, okay, why do we give you permission for the extra 2.9 million when we've already given you enough permission? All you have to do is
Instead
like
of doing a budget transfer, you could change the entire budget for where we are at midterm and change the amount of fund balance if that's what you want, if that's what the council wanted to do
I mean,
as a
maybe
whole.
we have to talk about that, but that to me makes a little more sense than giving. I don't actually think you're going to use the additional 3 million, so I'm kind of like, why would we give you the extra 3 million? Although I could see how on a very conservative assumption an administration would say, well, I like the flexibility, but in the end, we don't actually want to spend all 11 million, hopefully, and nobody is telling me we are. So I guess my suggestion is just that we not increase the authorized amount and just account for it within the transfer that, oh, look, these other things actually changed, which are,
I mean, if you want to do that, you have to change your whole budget. Every line item would have to change.
well, I think that's actually what's supposed to happen to some extent, is that changes are supposed to be made to the budget over the course of the year, because that's where we give you permission to do it, right?
But
I don't.
at midterm, if you want to relook at your budget and you want to change the amount of fund balance that you use, then you'd have to change this. You have to change the authorization of expenditures on the entire budget. You would essentially be doing a new budget from the numbers that were given at midterm.
To me, this feels like more of a new budget than what I'm saying, because this changes the total amount.
It does change the total amount, but if you want to use less fund balance, then you'd have to change, you have to authorize all the changes for all the departments and all the other expenditures to pull that use of fund balance.
Well, yeah, it
down.
would have to come from the things that you're saying in this other thing where you're anticipating.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. It would have to be that way.
That's a lot of work.
You'd have
Why
to,
is that a lot of work, though? I mean, that's like
you'd have to
adding maybe 10
extract
more
from the
lines.
police, you'd have to extract from the fire, you'd have to extract from law, you'd have to extract from
You'd have to
DPW.
extract
All probably
every
salary
line item.
lines.
That to me actually seems like the responsible thing to do. It seems like, given what we know, you would go through, I mean, it's not like, this is what people do in other cities, is you list out the places where you're having the savings and you lower it so that the police are, let's not use the police, let's say Parks has a budget and they're like, oh, we were underspending, but we have this authorization, so we're gonna blow through it at the end. At least this way we've said, oh, you haven't spent this, so we're taking it now before you get a chance to make a new plan. Whereas like in this scenario, we're actually just authorizing more, and the thing that you're saying here would be less constrained. It would be, we wouldn't have built.
You would be redoing your entire budget.
I don't view it, I mean, personally, I don't hear it as, you would be adjusting the codes that have the biggest surpluses, because you're also saying there's like 5 million here and we only need 2.9 million, so you'd have to find the half that's the biggest. You'd find the codes with the biggest changes, I think, assuming that they're concentrated in certain parts, and you would just list more codes and you would transfer them. There would
Certainly
be
a possibility.
Okay, well, I raised the possibility.
I would just say that my thought on this is and I agree with, it would be the responsible thing possibly, but we authorized this budget at the beginning of the year based on what the department head said that they needed for the year. She's coming back now from what the department head said. We know what's in there. We could project. You'd have to almost have another committee meeting, because you'd have to have police and fire come in, both of whom are supposedly looking at hiring classes. And if we took money out of there, then they wouldn't be able to hire the classes. I don't know where the DPW stands I understand where you're saying, Counselor, but I'm just wondering,
Well, I mean, right here in this mid-year budget report, which is separate of this, I mean, it outlines the areas that are having different variances, and it would be pulling from those, it would be saying, here's what we expect at this point in time. Because, yes, the department has thought that 9 months ago, a year ago, frankly, but now we have more information. So now it is reasonable to adjust codes, and it would take into consideration the hiring of classes and all that. Because if this doesn't account for the hiring of classes and all that, then this is wrong, right? Like, this would not be accurate. So assuming this is accurate, then why wouldn't we just?
so as we head into the April budget hearings, we'd be asking the department heads to reevaluate where they are now?
No, it's just saying, like, look, we've monitored your budget over the year. Here's the projection for the current year, and we're taking some from certain codes to fund other codes where we have or don't have.
But we wouldn't be funding, we'd be keeping it in the fund balance.
We would basically be adjusting our fund balance use down because of the increase in revenue. We would use the increase in revenue to offset the fund balance use, and we would fund these other increases with the things that were underspent year to date. So like, everything in the budget did not get spent the way people thought they would. So we'd be taking it, using that to fund the new expenses and pushing. I mean, you could do it any which way. I'm giving a simplified version of it, but
I believe it's his point that it should be a purposeful intent after you get an actual report to readjust for the purpose of reserving as much of the fund balance as possible in the existing budget.
right. You're saying that's a lot. I know you're not a huge office, so you're saying, like, you hear
I'm
that as
down
a lot
2
of work.
people.
Yeah. You're like,
You're looking at the person doing
we're
the
basically
work.
looking at the budget office. So I understand the reason you would have that reaction. So I still think it may be the best practice for our own budgeting purposes, but we can think about it.
Mary, are you looking to hire? Are we looking
There's
for?
some, I need some help, I need some help in my department, there's no question
I'm
about
saying, are we actively seeking that, or?
it. Trying to, but I've
in this and
got
do
a
the absolute right
situation that can't speak about, and with personnel that I can't speak about it.
But the money is in the budget to hire 2 other people.
Person and a half, really.
Person and a half.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
I think we're done. I'll close this finance hearing. Thank you all.